Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry. For today's video, I'm going to discuss what's ahead for the month of December in Dragalia Lost. We got our new message from Director Okada today about this month in Dragalia Lost, with a focus on December and a few teases at the future of the game, including some important information about balance and possibly what's to come for the new year. So I want to discuss all of that in this video, and in addition to that, we also got our preview of the next summon showcase, Winter Wardens, so toward the end of the video I will touch on that as well. This is the one that I had mentioned had been data mined, so this information has been known and available for a while for those who were interested in that and sought that out via the wiki or via Game Press. So that information is not especially new, but it's going to be the first time I'm discussing it, so I will spend a little time toward the end of the video focused on that. Of course, with it being the first of the month, we also got our shop reset and our treasure trade reset, including the Astral Raid treasure trade, which now has some additional rewards in it. You can actually get some more augments from it, and you can also trade for rupees if you wish to. One of the things to point out about the Void Battle treasure trade as well is that you can now trade void leaves for rupees at a pretty good rate. In fact, it's such a good rate that many people are suggesting now that it's actually better to farm the void battles that have double drops, like the Void Dragon battles that are on double drops, rather than sinking in your resources, your stamina, into Avenue to Fortune. So take that for what you will. Right now, Avenue to Fortune is on double drops. I think especially with this Expert Void Battle situation coming out pretty soon, that we're going to talk about in what's ahead for this month, it's very likely that you'll want to spend much more time in Void Battles anyway, and now suddenly you have a pretty good rupee outlet from them. And not only that, but you can stash your leaves or void seeds to exchange for rupees later on if you somehow hit the rupee cap. So far, I've been really appreciating the changes to augments and rupees as far as game balance goes. I was actually able to tackle 3 of the Master High Dragons this weekend. So I took down High Zodiarch, then I took down High Brunilda, and finally I took down High Mercury. And I was able to get enough augments that I can actually augment 1 adventure of each element to kind of set myself up against each High Dragon. So I do think that there is some effectiveness that I have to acknowledge about the balance changes that are happening, and the ones that are to happen in the future are even more exciting for me, for reasons I'll get into. So let's start with this month in Dragalia Lost. Of course, we have our director, Yuji Okada. He mentions the Mega Man event, and I haven't made a video about that yet, but I promise I will soon. We're going to get the Master difficulty tomorrow and the Superhero difficulty the day after that, so I'm waiting a little bit to see what all the event entails. But obviously there's a great adventurer, there's some great worm prints to discuss, interesting stage design, a lot of nice nods. I wouldn't have necessarily picked up that it was specifically Mega Man 2, not being super familiar with the individual entries in the franchise, but the stickers, the weapons, I think that in a lot of ways the event is a hit. Unfortunately, it also reuses the Great Worms, and that's basically the content of the event. It's a really faithful recreation of Mega Man, but I know there were some players who are kind of burnt out on the Great Worm loop with the High Dragons and just playing a lot of boss fights. So I think for some players it's kind of hit and miss, where there are things they love, but at the same time the actual gameplay itself isn't quite there yet. But that's why I really want to wait on Master and Superhero, because I think that those challenges could be very fun and very interesting once we got to that point. That's all I want to say about Mega Man for this video, since I'll probably cover that in the next few days. So for the rest of December, we're going to get a revival, first of all, in the second week of December of the Dragon Yule event called the Miracle of Dragon Yule. The challenge battle is going to have a new difficulty level, and they'll be increasing the maximum facility level. So this sounds like it's going to be handled identically to how they handled Halloween this year, where it was the same event, increase the max facility level to 35. which is kind of a difference with how they handled the Accursed Archives rerun. Our Library Obscura still capped at level 30, so I'm glad that this water facility, the Dragalia tree, is coming back, and it's going to be up to level 35. That should make people's lives a lot easier. This is one of the facilities that hasn't gotten a rerun. For players who started with, say, the wider English release, like the UK release, Singapore release, etc., they would never have had access to this facility since that was much later in the game's lifespan. So for anybody who's newer to the game than that, and I want to say that was February or March, this is going to be a valuable facility for you, and you're going to be playing this event for the first time. This is what I anticipated a couple of videos ago. I expected we weren't going to really get a proper new event for the rest of the year, or we would have probably known a little bit about it. So I'm not too surprised to see another rerun, but we are at a point where I'm wondering, they mentioned through the 1.5 year anniversary all the plans they had. And one of those plans was to allow you to rerun events or play past events at any time. Once we get that feature, what content are they going to pad out the calendar with? Are we going to have a real cycle of new events happening constantly that rotate in like a couple a month so that we have activities to do? Or are we going to fall back on void battles, other endgame boss battles? I just sincerely wonder, without the amount of reruns that we're having now, are they going to be able to produce enough new events like we had toward the beginning of the game? That question is a little bit down the road, obviously, but that's one of the things that comes to mind with the flood of reruns that we've had. Really, our last new event was Fractured Futures that included a new boss, new adventurers. It was a really blown out event, fantastic for the first anniversary. I really love that event. Stirring Shadows also fell in between then and Mega Man that we have now. And Stirring Shadows was just a story event, but a good way to freshen up a rerun if that's what was going to happen. So ultimately, I feel like this is something that's going to need to get sorted out. If we do have a permanent rerun feature, there's got to be some way to also bring in new content. I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet, but I don't mind seeing the Miracle of Dragalia come back. The holidays can be a busy time of the year, and so for me personally, having another chill event with Mega Man and now this, I feel pretty content to just ride this event out, save up some Wormite, wait for the new year. Not save up too much Wormite though, since the other thing it mentions is there's new Dragalia adventures and dragons available via Summon Showcase. So most likely it's going to include Dragalia Nefaria, Dragalia Xander, and Dragalia Cleo, as well as Dragalia Jeanne d'Arc, who was a 5-star dragon on that banner, and then new adventures similar to how Halloween worked. So I expect that we'll have, I want to say the banner had a slightly different name than this, but I think it was like Dragalia Defenders. I think we'll have Dragalia Defenders 2 with all the old units as well as the new units all on focus. In terms of who I think could be on this banner, I do think that there's a possibility of Cerise appearing, as well as Hildegard. There was actually some artwork at the time ahead of the Dragalia event that showed Cerise and Hildegard in Christmas outfits. So I'll share that if I'm able to find it on the video screen now. But just based on that artwork, I think there's a possibility that they fulfill that and give us Cerise. Hildegard is more of an uncertainty though, because Hildegard already has one alt. If you look at the original 5-star adventurers who don't have any alts at this point, you're only talking about Mikoto and Xainfried, I believe. Neither of them necessarily feel like they have a holiday vibe to them, so I don't know that they would actually get included here. I think it's more likely that we would maybe get Cerise as a 5-star. Maybe Hildegard would get another alt, but like a 4-star light wand or something. My vision for her is that maybe she could be kind of like Noelle, but for the light element, since the light element could really use something like that, and that might actually be powerful enough to diversify the meta choices in High Zodiarc's trial, if she's really that good of a buff bot. Just a consideration, but obviously that's not a guarantee either. The other unit, the third unit I think we could see would be somebody, just aesthetically, somebody wielding a Christmas tree as a lance. Maybe it's just because I saw that in other gachas like Fire Emblem Heroes with Christmas or holiday. I don't even know if there's a term for it in Fire Emblem Heroes, but Robin, male Robin, has like a Christmas tree from what I remember as a lance. So maybe there could be somebody like that. Like I could see Rex with him being a lumberjack, like being a wind lance that's just hauling around a giant tree. Maybe they could also go that route with other adventurers. Like, I think the other way they could take this is maybe bringing some more characters associated with the Ilian Church. So perhaps they could bring in Sibel. Sibel is a unit who I really think eventually will get an alt. She's a 3-star, but a really popular one, yet her original character isn't that easy to use. It has some unique properties. She can cast really large shields, but that's kind of what she has going for her, and it's still a little bit hard to set her up and find a good situation to use her in. So I could see her getting an alt at some point, and this might be the time to do it. And that's all I really want to say about the Miracle of Dragalia rerun. So let's move on to Astral Raids in December. There's going to be 4 Astral Raids in December, which basically confirms no raid event for the month of December, because when there's a raid, we don't get an Astral Raid. One of them is on right now, so we have Barbary on right now. We're also going to get Thanatos for the first time and Kronos from the Fractured Futures event from the first time. It's the dragon form, not the Nyx form, and pretty happy to see them actually round out the Astral Raids lineup. So some people in the past had speculated that they were delaying some of these for a future rotation because they wanted to start distributing weapon and dragon augments, which there are still only 10 apiece of for HP. But it looks like they're just going to bring them into the fold, and maybe this is just what our Astral Raids are going to look like. Who knows when we're going to get our next set of Astral Raids, or when we're going to get another proper raid event. It did feel like Fractured Futures was almost like a capstone on raids as an event type. Like, it felt so ultimate in the way that it was blown out, the features that it had, and Kindness in Captivity, while fun, and obviously Melsa is awesome, you know, it didn't feel quite at that level because the difficulty wasn't notched up to that degree. There weren't special events happening concurrent with it. Still though, I'm always happy to see Astral Raids, and you may have noticed with Barbary this weekend that the augment drops are better. So next week, we should get strength augments from whoever the raid boss is, and that's going to be a huge boon as well. So I'm glad. I feel like the situation with Astral Raids is pretty chill right now. It's at a good place. There are still a few issues where if you don't group up and get your clear early in the weekend, you might struggle to be able to get it and pull it off. But the fact that they rerun them, even if you can't get a deathless the first time or clear on the highest difficulty the first time, there's future opportunities, and there's going to be something later on that should make it easier for players as well. So the next thing is Light Mercurial Gauntlet 51 through 55 is coming. I'm glad they've kind of slowed their roll on these because they've probably noticed that not as many players are able to take these down or are even trying to take them down. Right now, with this update, we'll have all gauntlets through level 55. I feel like 60 maybe would be a good time to retire the gauntlet system. Like, it's already pretty hard if you want to clear 55. You need very invested units. I don't really know that I want to keep playing the gauntlet if it just goes on and on. I feel like at some point they should just cap it and let us be, and we'll just receive that much treasure hoard every month. I just don't think it's really as fresh a mode as it was around the middle of its lifespan, where it was feeling pretty challenging. There was a lot of brainstorming around it. I think this mode has kind of reached the end of its life, in my opinion. Then we're going to get Chapter 11 the same day. So, interestingly, this just says the second week of December. So today's December 1st, it's a Sunday for me. What I hope this means is that we get this on December 8th or 9th, maybe while the Mega Man event is still happening. Because I really don't want everything to get dumped all at once after Mega Man ends, with us getting a new story chapter, a new Mercurial Gauntlet, and a new event. I just think that would be a lot to happen all at once. Although at the same time, it's kind of like the last content dump before the end of the year, so you can pick away at it while you're on your winter holiday. So I do think that that wouldn't be too bad given the context, but I do hope it's kind of spread out a little bit. But obviously, Chapter 11 is the big thing a lot of people are looking forward to. We finally get a closer look at our two androids here, and it even mentions this chapter is going to center around Luca. So I think it's highly likely that Luca will be the Gala adventurer in January when the next Gala showcase happens. Besides the actual new chapter, we're also going to get the very hard difficulty that was teased before. And interestingly, it says we're going to get augments from it and materials that are required in the future for unbinding the 6th Mana Circle tier. So finally, we hear more about the 6th Mana Circle. The fact that the materials you need, some of them are going to come from the story, is very much appreciated, especially if they roll these out fairly slowly. Hopefully this isn't a situation with like Champion's Testaments where they're so hard to get enough of to finish your various 5-star characters. I hope that if you're already at a point where you're going for the 6th Mana Circle and you've invested that much into your character, that these materials don't become a huge roadblock. I hope it's not too much harder because from what it sounds like, they're going to be strategic in which characters they pick. So let's read on. Besides the very hard difficulty, the Void Battles are going to also get a change, and this relates to Astral Raids. So there's going to be an Astral's Bane ability, effective against bosses in Astral Raids, added to the weapons you can craft by defeating the Manticore Void enemies for each element. This is a good change, in my opinion. Astral Raids are something where, if you're an enfranchised player, it can be very easy. If you have a powerful team, you're a high dragon grinder, you have some good weapons, it can feel like a non-issue, which I think makes us a little bit blind to the people who are going through it for the first time. Maybe they never even played that raid before. They don't have as high a might to get into the more powerful rooms. And having an Astral Bane ability would really provide a serious advantage. I know we like to frame Astral Raids as more of a survival-oriented content because the timer is 10 minutes, but the reality is a lot of people are trying to clear these quickly anyway, and for some of the raids, like with Fraganoth, there's a DPS check component because there are things that you need to do to continue fighting the boss, otherwise you possibly could get wiped. So in that case, I'm thinking about how you have to destroy the volcanoes. You can't just be a completely defensive team. Having that Astral Bane, especially if this is like a solid 30%, I feel is a really good way to ease people into that content and kind of give some relevance to the weapon drops from the Manticores, because although the Slayer Strength weapons, the Therion's Bane weapons, etc. that you can get from the Manticores are kind of cute, kind of fun, they really have no practical purpose, especially now that we have these absurd Tier 2 High Dragon weapons, where the flat strength that you get from those probably going to be better than a slowly ramped up Slayer Strength anyway, to be honest. So we're going to get some new Astral Bane weapons, and they're adjusting the amount of materials that drop, making those weapons easier to craft. And they kind of go into the logic. Astral Raids don't happen very often, but you can get a lot of upgrade items each time. That's why, to make it a little easier to challenge higher difficulties, they're increasing the number of ways to approach those quests. So I appreciate that. I think that's a very thoughtful change. And regarding future updates, this is an interesting one. So we were teased with this character and the silhouettes of a bunch of other characters. New high difficulty quests, harder than the Master High Dragons, presumably, or at least the High Dragons. They're called the Agito Uprising, and it's their final update planned, or it's a part of their final version update for 2019. So I don't know what we'll abbreviate this to, maybe AU or just Uprising. I don't really know what is meant by Agito, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But it says the new boss quest announced in the September Dragalia Digest will be called the Agito Uprising. Unlike bosses up to this point, which have been predominantly dragons, these bosses take on an almost human form. They'll unlock after the update at the end of the year. We're also creating new background music for the battles, so I hope you're looking forward to it. With the next update, certain adventurers will be able to unbind the 6th Mana Circle tier. A new material is required to unbind nodes on the 6th tier. This new material can be obtained from the new very hard difficulty of the main campaign. So, we'll get into that a little bit more, but this is all part of the final version update. So the first chunk was the Agito Uprising. Only interesting thing I'll note on this is they do say they have an almost human form. So I am still part of the Theorycraft camp that these are androids, and that's what the series of high trials is all about. I think that this guy might be wind element, but there is also a vibe I'm getting that this could be like a dual element boss. The fact that he has such a dark demeanor, I do think that this could be like a shadow and wind boss, if that is even a thing. And maybe there's even like a flame component with all the red in his design. Or perhaps he's neutral element. I don't know, I'm definitely holding some Damascus ingots to see which tier 2 high dragon weapon I want to upgrade, since I presume we're going to want those against this particular fight. But I'm going to try focus on just the element that I need to take on this first boss to start off with. So now let's get more into the 6th Mana Circle tier. We'll share more information about which adventurers will be able to access the 6th tier in a separate notification, but we also plan to adjust 3-star adventurers in the summoning pool. So that is really interesting. I'm trying to think of exactly what that means. The first time I read this, the fact that they call out the summoning pool, I kind of read this as like an appearance rate adjustment. But I think they're only using in the summoning pool here to indicate that these are quote-unquote natural 3-stars, adventurers who are summoned as a 3-star, as opposed to, I guess, them being promoted to a higher rarity eventually. So I think that that's just what they mean, is that they're going to adjust natural 3-star adventurers, which is great. They need an adjustment. They were powered up to be closer in power to 4 and 5 stars, but some of their weaknesses are unfortunately still a bit crippling for them. The fact that they don't have even one affliction with 100% res, or they don't have 100% res to even one affliction, they only have 75% res typically, or some of them don't even have that, they have a split affliction res, is already pretty bad. But then you consider that their affliction res also takes up 2 of their ability slots. So they already have a pretty steep hill to climb. I think the most fun way to spice them up would be to kind of give them the 6th Mana Circle, maybe even at a blanket level, that fixes their affliction res and maybe gives them some more unique properties on their skills. A lot of 3-star adventurers just have generic skills and animations that just do damage. The other thing I would appreciate, if this is more of a staggered thing, is actually unique background art for them. I don't know that they'd be willing to go that far, especially since a lot of 3-star adventurers are getting the alt treatment. I was thinking back, and you know, we got Aoi, who got an alt. We got Zardan. We've had Zania. So they've been pretty reasonable about the alt. I also wonder, is this going to apply to welfare 4-star adventurers as well, like our raid units? They could use a little bit of a bump too, at least to fix their affliction res. So I am curious which adventurers are going to get the 6th tier. I am curious about the 3-stars and what that means. But let's continue on. We're going to get a new Flame-attuned Void enemy as part of that update, the Volcanic Chimera. So it says the Volcanic Chimera is an extremely tough boss, but it has a few gameplay elements designed for co-op, like those you might find in Advanced Dragon Trials, but you can work to beat it in solo too. When you defeat this boss, you'll get crafting materials that will allow you to craft weapons that are more powerful than the core weapons and other Void weapons up to this point. The Advanced Dragon Trials are a challenge to complete while not playing co-op. That's actually very confusing, because most people complete the Advanced Dragon Trials in co-op. Oh, I get it. They're saying they're a challenge, like they're really hard to complete when not playing co-op. Well, they're also really hard to complete when playing co-op as well for a lot of people. But anyway, we hope this new enemy will be a way for players to get powerful weapons by playing solo before moving on and challenging the Advanced Dragon Trials in co-op. So very cool. This is like a bridge toward the Advanced Dragon Trials, especially on harder difficulties, it sounds like, because the weapon drops are going to be better than the core weapons and other void weapons. It's another manner in which the existing weapons are kind of getting obsoleted, which I don't love, but I do think a bridge content toward the higher difficulty was needed. They're starting with Flame, but we unlock battles for the other elements over time, and they're adding expert difficulty to certain void enemies and changing the existing difficulty to standard. So it looks like our usual suspects of the void high dragons, or I guess they're not high dragons, they're just regular dragons, but the void dragons in any case, getting expert difficulty, so very cool. Expert difficulty battles will drop the material required for unbinding the 6 mana circle tier. Fantastic, we're going to probably need plenty of that. I'm glad that it's dropped from it. Hopefully it's not like a random squish 'em rarity material. And drops like the heart materials required for crafting will drop more frequently. Also fantastic. The difficulty level is a little higher than standard, but you can get a lot more rewards from these bosses. I am actually looking forward to that. I feel like the void enemies have never reached a point of just like disgusting difficulty level. Even when they were first released, they felt manageable. So at least to me, as an enfranchised player, I'm happy. Like, this is a difficulty level that feels appropriate, feels like a good stepping stone, especially when we have really hard content right now. This feels like if I spend wings in this, I'll be satisfied. I won't feel like I'm wasting my wings. That's kind of an important thing I've been missing right now, having finished the Imperial Onslaught grind, is where do I dump my wings, if not the high dragons, to actually use them efficiently? And some of these new void battles look like they will hit the sweet spot for that. So, kind of getting toward the end here, there's going to be some UI changes for the shop. Obviously, it's a little bit disappointing. It doesn't look like you can see Nina here, so hopefully they make Nina very prominent. She is a fan favorite character, even though she's never gotten a playable version, but eventually I assume that will change. And finally, toward the end, regarding future game balance. So this is something I super appreciate. It's a big acknowledgement of some of the problems that we've seen unfold since, I would say, the advent of Time Attack and the Expert High Dragons. Here we go. We've been making some big balance adjustments lately, and we hope to continue making adjustments as more content is added in the future, taking player feedback and play data into account. Our current goal is to increase the number of adventurers who can challenge the game's high difficulty content. Because the clear rate for high difficulty content using certain adventurers is extremely high, we are considering making adjustments so that a wider variety of adventurers can complete that content. We'll gradually make adjustments to adventurers by unlocking their 6th mana circle tier, or by adjusting the adventurer's capabilities. This is what I needed to hear. This is an acknowledgement that there has been a great deal of homogeneity in the meta. There's been a great deal of convergence in some of these trials to an absurd degree, where if you're not running one of the 2 meta units in, say, High Jupiter's trial, then it's going to be extremely hard for you to find a room to be able to clear. If you're in High Zodiarch's trial and you're not running one of the 3 meta units, it's going to be harder for you to find a room and clear. And even in some of the other trials, if you're playing High Mercury, chances are your room is going to have a Victor and a Noel and a Welly and probably another Welly. I mean, that's most likely going to be the case. Obviously, there are some cool things you can do. I was able to clear it using Hawk, but that was with a dedicated team who was actually willing to accept a bow to begin with and work with me to try get the clear I needed to craft a High Dragon trial weapon at tier 2. So it's still very similar in terms of the comps that you're seeing, and I think in a lot of cases it was informed by the expert time attack results, where most players are going for what we saw emerge as the best time strategies or most frequent strategies. High Brunhilde's trial I actually think is kind of in a healthy place. There's enough different strategies, and frankly, the fastest strategies are not the most popular there. Most people actually still want to run a healer in High Brunhilde's trial, which is a rarity, to say the least, and kind of shocking considering the low amount of healing you actually need in that trial. But players got used to there being a healer in Thaniel, so they accept Thaniel despite his low DPS output. Obviously that may change pretty soon here with the banner preview we're going to look at, but it's just funny how you see the convergence, not necessarily to the optimal strategy, but just to what's popular and in some cases what's easier or more convenient to run. High Midgard Stormer's trial, I feel like, is diverse, but for pubs, chances are you're going to be Ramona, Emma, Reyna, and Verica. That seems to have predominated, even though it's not necessarily the fastest, not necessarily the best comp. Obviously a lot of liabilities in that comp with burn, getting exhausted quickly in the match, having sleep res on some of the characters, bringing a healer like Verica as opposed to Halloween Lowen. So not necessarily an ideal comp, but not everybody wants to run around and experiment with Chelsea either and risk that. So it's kind of just funny how these things work out, how people converge to an equilibrium, and then it's so hard to shake. It's so hard to move from that to the point that people don't want to try with something different. So honestly, any efforts to try to address that, I super appreciate. I don't know if it'll be enough. I think those things are hard to shake from like a social dynamic standpoint. So even if the characters get buffed and improved, I feel like there might still be some reluctance toward accepting them, but still have to applaud the effort, and I have to appreciate the acknowledgement that this is kind of a problem for people. So that's all I really want to say about future game balance and high difficulty content. And then finally, we got a free 5-star summon voucher for a dragon, some hustle hammers, and some void seeds. So gifts are always appreciated. I did my 5-star summon voucher for a dragon, and I got a Liger. So nothing great for me. I already had a Max Unbound's Liger that I got randomly over time, so didn't really do me any good, but that's okay. I still had fun summoning on that, and it was a random chance at something awesome. And that's pretty much it for this month in Dragalia Lost. So with a couple minutes that we have left, let's talk about Winter Wardens, since I know some of y'all will want to hear my impressions on that. Winter Wardens is a showcase I plan to skip. I'm not going to be able to make a separate video just focus on this showcase, so I want to talk about it right now. The featured 5-star adventurer is a new water healer called Jiangxia. She is a chillin' healer, and her relics are about to make our lives a whole lot easier. She now travels the world, sharing the convenience of relics with everyone she meets. Her curiosity can make her a bit impulsive, and she has a tendency to get carried away. So, very cute, very adorable healer, all bundled up. In her artwork, it looks like she's doing some ice fishing, in the trailer rather, that showed up for her. And I think you might even be able to see it here, but it looks like she's fishing. She draws in a fish from the ice. So cute. I feel like she's a great unit, very appealing, very adorable. However, what most people are interested in is how she compares to the existing water healers. And unfortunately for Thaniel, she basically does his job, but better. So her first skill, Curasive Catch, just like his, heals all allies and removes burning. That alone could be the nail in the coffin for Thaniel in a world where we have Gala Elisan, because nowadays Thaniel doesn't even really need the Chocolatiers to give everyone a defense buff because of Gala Eli. But to add insult to injury, she also can buff the entire team's defense just like Thaniel can, except when she does it, everybody also gets regen. Now granted, this is on a slower cooldown than Thaniel's second skill, but if you have the Chocolatiers on your Thaniel, well, you're not even going to need that on her because she has skill prep of 100%. She also has burn res of 100%, just like he does. And instead of a useless ability like Gauge Inhibitor, she has HP 70% equals healing of 15%. So frankly, she is just a better Thaniel. I don't think he is bad or worthless if you've invested into him. I have a feeling he's still going to show up and do just fine in plenty of pubs for Brunhilde's trial. But if you happen to get her and you wanted to build a water healer, I think there's no question that you would prefer to build her over him and that she will perform better. His healing is good enough, I should point out, for Master, certainly, for Standard, certainly. Expert is the only one that's a little bit tight, and you have to be pretty competent. You have to be pretty familiar with the rotations, not have a lot of wasted movements if you want to heal through that, especially burnables, decently well. So in that context, she's probably going to be a little easier, but even then, there are things like Halloween Meridimus now where Thaniel has had plenty of potency to be able to heal that trial, so he's been just fine for it, and I think he'll continue to be that way, but it's just unfortunate that she's such a direct power creep of him. The second thing that we got featured here is a dragon, Kamui, so I will plunge my fangs into any who stand against my master. Obviously a really awesome looking wolf, a noble-minded dragon hailing from the snowy plains of northern Hinamoto. His white fur gives off a faint light that's said to drive away evil, and the people of the land revere him as their protector. So Kamui has the ability to inflict freeze, actually kind of relevant with the High Dragon trials and Master often being susceptible to crowd control or debilitating afflictions like stun, freeze, as well as, I'm trying to think of the other one, sleep is the other one. So kind of relevant. However, unfortunately, for High Brunhilde's trial, she's actually immune to freeze for some reason on Master. So it's not going to work there, but it could work on somebody like an Audric if you were taking Kamui into High Jupiter's trial. Interestingly, it's exactly the same pattern that we've seen lately with Kagutsuchi as well as Haster of a prime strength dragon. This is actually kind of good though. It's similar to Kagutsuchi in that it's in an element where there are adventurers who care about the number of buffs they have. So Kagutsuchi could put extra buffs onto Cerise, and her first skill does more damage the more buffs she has. And there are two water adventurers I can think of. There's Karina and Xander, both of whom do more damage for every buff they have off their first skill. So both of them appreciate somebody like Kamui if you're trying to just funnel buffs into them. There are some insane speed clears with Karina, in particular in High Brunhilde's trial, where you just stack a bunch of buffs on her with Dear Diary. However, once again with these dragons, for co-op, unless you're controlling two of the characters and you're doing co-op with two other people and not three, the primed effect is only going to apply to the character you're controlling, really. So in co-op, this is typically worse than a 60% strength dragon. That said, for things like the Mercurial Gauntlet, these are really nice dragons to have on your backup adventures, especially your buff bots, since they'll power up your main DPS, who is your leader typically. One little piece of trivia that I want to point out about this that I did not realize until very recently is that actually the way that this works, the water ability on the primed, it's not the unit that's equipped to that has to be water element. It's actually your leader that has to be water element, or the recipient of the primed buff. So you could put Kamui on a flame character in your second slot and be leading with a water character, and when that water character gets their first skill active, they're actually going to get the primed buff, even though Kamui is equipped to another type of element character. On the other hand, if you're leading with like a flame adventurer and have a water character in your team with Kamui equipped, even when that flame adventurer gets their first skill ready, Kamui will not give them a primed buff. So kind of weird how that works. That's a pretty narrow thing. That's not something you would need to consider or exploit all too often, but I do want to point it out because I had not expected it to work that way when I was trying to bring my Hawk into High Jupiter's Trial and have him give Haster buffs to my Galacleo, who I was controlling. It didn't work like I had hoped, but that's pretty much all we found out about this banner from here and from the trailer. So if that's all you want to know, I will bid you adieu. But we do know from the data mine what the 4-star is going to look like, so I will talk about that for just a minute. If you want to hear about that, stick around. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Okay, so the 4-star on this showcase is named Durant. He is a new Shadow Blade, and he is all about damage through basic attacks. His first skill is called Biting Revenge. That skill gives him a buff for 20 seconds that increases his strength by 40%, but decreases his defense by 25%. And his second skill is called Unchained Rage, which for 20 seconds increases his critical rate by 30%, and again decreases his defense by 25%. His abilities are full HP equals strength of 13%, paralysis res of 100%, and full HP equals critical damage of 17%. So Durant is a new type of character all about normal attacks, 2 buffs, meaning that a buff time Wyrmprint will likely be pretty good on him, and other than that, just things like a strength Wyrmprint or a critical rate Wyrmprint are the other types of bread and butter prints that would work well. One really nice thing about him as well is with dragons, having lower defense doesn't really matter. It's similar to what we saw with Audric and his third ability, Cursed Blood, I think it was called. So Durant could be a pretty good carrier of a powerful dragon for something like a raid. Otherwise, he's the type of unit who, if you can not get hit, if you can avoid getting hit with him, he can probably deal some really incredible damage with the amount of buffs he can maintain on himself. But as soon as you get hit, it's very possible he'll die because he's likely to be down with 50% reduced defense all the time because of his first and second skill, if not even more if you've been able to stack some of those buffs on top of each other. So really interesting character, cool design. I might try pick him up. If I summon on the showcase, it's going to be for that sole reason. Otherwise, everything is going to get saved so that I can summon once we actually get Dragon Yule Defenders 2 come out. Alright everyone, if you've stuck around this long, that is going to do it for this video. Thank you for indulging me, thank you for listening. Hopefully you found this video interesting, talking about the new month in Dragalia Lost, some of my feelings about the changes that are happening and hopes for the future. I'm a little bit more optimistic after this month. Despite the fact that it's mostly reruns, I think there's some good things happening with the game balance that I extremely appreciate. And I think the fact that the story chapters coming out with the new very hard mode for the story will breathe some new life into that domain for me as well. And remember, we were told that after this chapter, new chapters are going to come out every other month. So if nothing else for future content, that is something that we have to look forward to keep coming back to. That's something I am personally excited about. Alright though, thank you so much for watching, y'all. Have a great week ahead. Take care, and I'll see you next time.